Hello, my name is Abraham Hernandez, and I did my research on mating and mate choice of a mountain goat. Age or social rank. For Laporte, throughout the abstract, there are two hypotheses. Number one, we have higher age equals experience, which means basically if having a higher age as being a mountain goat and having more experience, does that mean that you'll have a better mating success? Number two, we have social rank equals dominance. This becomes a hypothesis because since other species rely on social rank for their mate choice, would it be the same for a mountain goat? That is the question. Because for example, in the wild, there are so many dangers out there, so of course you would need to find a partner that will make you feel safe and is strong enough to protect you. Which, this ties into social rank because mountain goats, they have male-to-male competition, which is very intense, and they use alternative mating tactics in order to have mating success. So basically, would you want to have a weak partner or a strong dominant one when it comes to being protected from these very intense male-to-male competition when you're a female? The research was observed on 3 runts being investigated, so we can determine the different social ranks of age that are in effect. During breeding season, the competition is very intense. These fights are very intense because they want to display and gain dominance and go higher into the social ranks from these competitive fights. Their horns and sexual characteristics come into play in these very intense competitions. They come into play because the bigger and the more intimidating the features are, the higher status they have and more dominance they will present in these competitions. As for male goats, the older they get, the more features they get to use in battle. So basically, what this means, as they grow older, their body mass and their horns grow. So basically, those are very intimidating in these battles. Also, since they're older, they also have more battle experience compared to younger goats, so they have more an advantage when they're older. Some of these characteristics include horns, canine teeth, and body size. So, as I said before, as they grow older, these special characteristics are giving them more advantages. Frankly, these characteristics aren't always strong enough for every mountain goat, so that is why there's other mating tactics other than tending. Tending is basically when a strong dominant male defends a female from other males wanting to mate with her. But there is another tactic that is used for mountain goats who aren't as dominant. This other tactic is called coursing. This tactic is when a less dominant goat finds a female mountain goat that is lone and takes a chance and mates with her, only if there isn't a dominant male with her. Because if there is a dominant male tending her, then the weaker goat wouldn't take the chance because he knows he'll get injured. The main objective of this research is to determine the influence of age and social ranks of males. In this research, it is predicted that the older males will have more female relationship pairs compared to the younger goats. The female goats also have a place in the mating choice, not just for males picking the females, but the females also have reasons as well. The older female goats are the ones mainly targeted because in their age they're ready to have a baby. Usually male mountain goats aren't really picky, but the older females is what they're always going for. They're always going for the older females because they are ready to have birth of children, because they're at a time where they're about to not be able to reproduce babies, so they are more likely to want to intercourse with other male goats because they're almost at their time where they won't be able to make babies anymore. Materials and methods. So during the time when these scientists were doing these observations, they were mainly looking at the behaviors of the mountain goats. They're basically looking at how they behave and how they use these certain mating tactics in order to get their mating success with their special individual. And they're also looking into social dominance because they wanted to see why it was so important to these male goats having such a high skill ranking or high dominance ranking and showing that off to other goats. And they did this for a good 3 years. They began in early November and it ended in early December from 2004 to 2006. And they did this observations at Carl Ridge, and Carl Ridge is in the front range of Rocky Mountains in west central Alberta, Canada. And when they were observing these mountain goats, they were observing specific mountain goats, and they were B5 immigrant males. And when they were observing these B5 immigrant males, they were looking through a scope of 15 to 45 lenses, and they did this because they wanted to identify the goats and the members of their consort pairs, and they wanted to do that because they wanted to specifically look at pairs and not individuals. And they did this from ranges from 200 to 700 meters from their 14 to 45 lenses, and each of the pairs were observed every 2 minutes. And just knowing that they're observed every 2 minutes, we know that these scientists didn't want to let their eye off of them. So we know that they were very precise in their data. So during these observations, the scientists noticed that goats arc their backs when there's a present threat. A present threat could be another goat wanting to challenge him. And what I mean by challenging is that they were challenging to take away their lady goat. And these fights to get that lady goat are super intense. And these fights are called a circle fight. This conflict is so intense that the challenger ends up backing away because they don't want to end up having serious injuries. But let's say if this fight does end up happening, both goats could be injured and they could be left with stabs from their horns, and they could be bleeding terribly with like a hole in it. And the sad thing is that it could be very horrible for the goat protecting his lady, because let's say the challenger goat wins, right? It's a double whammy for the other goat because he loses his special lady and he also gets injured. So it really does suck if he were to lose. So based off all the encounters he did from 2004 to 2006, it came up to be 137 observed encounters. From those 137 observed encounters, the 6-year older and always ended up winning against the 3 to 4 years. And for that reason is because the 6 years already has such strong body weight and they had very long horns that they had the advantages over the 3 to 4 years, because the 3 to 4 years they're still developing their body mass compared to the 6 years. And because of that, the goats that were 3 years to 4 years didn't really get the experienced females, and those were the ones that the male goats were really wanting to go for, were the female goats. But that was because the older female goats are starting to lose their reproductive trait, and when they lose that, they're not going to be able to make their babies anymore. So that's why it's easier for goats to go for older experienced females, because the females are wanting to mate compared to younger females. There's nothing wrong with the younger female goats, it's just that they prefer the older female goats. And from there, we're here at results. And for results, they discovered the aging of males and their specific tactics, such as tending. And after observing the goats, they concluded that males who were older than 4 years of age was able to tend a female. So anything other than 4 years of 4, the goats weren't really able to tend because they weren't strong enough and dominant to tend females. About 87% of the population that was studied, goats over the age of 4, were more successful compared to the goats at 3 years or younger. So from there we know that goats that were 3 years younger didn't have as much advantages as 4 years or older. And 79% of the pairs that were observed each had a male that was very high ranked because they were so dominant and had a good amount of battle experience. And 12% of those pairs had takeovers. So from those 12% of pairs, they experienced takeovers, basically a male wanting to challenge and take away their special lady. And we also found out that most of the time females are actually the ones mainly they're mainly doing foraging, and then for males they really didn't do that much foraging compared to females. But the good thing is that when females are foraging, the male is very close and not letting her out of his sight. For example, they were always so close to each other that it was about 4 to 7 meters to zero point 0.4 meters. So when the male defends the female from another goat, it only takes them 2% of their time, which is pretty good. So then the other 98%, they're always together just foraging or just doing their mating time. And about 44% of tending males ended up mating with the focal female. So focal female is basically the females ready to mate and ready to produce babies. And about 50% of the females mated, they mated with 2 other male goats. And that was only, for some reason, the 50% that mated with the 2 different males, that only happened in 2005. The other 2 years, for some reason, they never found any female goat mating with a different male goat. And for that reason, 20% that were mated, it resulted into having a young.
Discussion: Age and social rank are 2 important characteristics of males, so the hypothesis of this research has been proven. These 2 traits were positively related to each other until the age of 8 years. As they grow older, their structural size and body mass increases with age until mass and size are reached. The growth of their size gives them a huge advantage when they're having their intense fights. Mountain goats were found to use the tending tactic the most for mating success. Males at Kaw Ridge are already sexually mature at the age of a year, but the 1-year male goats are only seen to use the coursing tactic instead of tending. They're using coursing more because younger males of the age of 1 year aren't fully developed of size in their horns and canine teeth and body mass. Male goats face the risk of serious injuries from fights when approaching tending pairs because of the aggressive retaliation of the dominant males. Males who use coursing was considered the lowest in their dominance hierarchy because it shows the lack of dominance and power when they're using coursing, which is why tending was used the most for mountain goats, because that shows that they're the most dominant of their species. And mountain goats were finally found that their social dominance and their aging are really important to look at, because that shows why their community gets along with each other and shows how their rankings get together.